The observation deck of the silent vigil station floated in the endless black of space, hidden behind layers of distortion fields and energy-dampening screens that made it invisible to every known form of detection. It was a place of silence, not only in name but in purpose, where humanity had learned to listen without speaking, to watch without acting. Commander Alana Rice stood with her hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the holographic projection dominating the chamber. The planet Thula 7 hung there like a jewel caught in a storm, its atmosphere igniting in flashes of orange and red as plasma fire rained down from orbit. Vexor warships moved with the certainty of predators who knew there was no one to challenge them. It was the third bombardment this month. Beside her, Admiral Zhang leaned on the railing that circled the display. His face, creased with years of service, was illuminated by the sickly glow of destruction reflected in the hologram. He said, "Nothing for a long while," as though words themselves might dishonor the enormity of what they were seeing. Finally, his gravel-edged voice broke the silence. "Another colony lost. The Vexor are expanding faster than our models predicted." Alana did not turn toward him. Her gaze remained fixed on the planet, where city after city flared into ash. Beneath the Vexor onslaught, the Felons barely achieved orbital capability a century ago. "They were never prepared for this," she murmured. Her voice was steady, but her tension lingered beneath the calm. For 3 centuries, humanity had lived this way, in the shadows, in the silence. Since the discovery of faster-than-light travel, Earth's leaders had decreed a doctrine that came to define every generation of her career: observe, record, and never interfere. Humanity was to remain unseen, learning everything about the galaxy while revealing nothing of itself. The galaxy was too dangerous, they had argued. Let others bleed and falter. Humanity would survive by patience and knowledge. She had believed in that doctrine once, believed in it so completely that she devoted her life to it, climbing through the ranks of the Shadow Fleet, serving on station after station, learning to measure her worth not in victories won, but in reports compiled and transmissions logged. But tonight, as she watched the Vexor unleash their fury on a people who could do little more than scream into the void, a crack opened in that foundation. Zhang turned his weathered face toward her. His eyes, sharp even in their fatigue, caught hers. He had seen the flicker of emotion, the slight tightening of her jaw. "You're questioning the silence," he said, not accusing, simply observing. She exhaled slowly, unclasping her hands at last. "We tell ourselves we're different because we don't conquer, don't destroy. But what's the difference between pulling the trigger and watching it happen, Admiral? Either way, the Felons die, and we are complicit." He regarded her for a long moment. Complicity is safer than exposure. If the Vexor knew we were here, if anyone knew, we'd lose every advantage we've built. Alana's eyes drifted back to the holographic display, to the writhing flames consuming Thula 7, the screams of the colony's desperate transmissions, cut short by jamming fields, seemed to echo in her mind, even though no sound carried through. The void. She wondered, not for the first time, how many others had been silenced this way, while humanity watched from its invisible towers. Her voice was quieter now, but sharper. "What happens when it's us, Admiral? When the Vexor turn their eyes toward Sol and decide our silence makes us weak?" Zhang did not answer. Perhaps he could not. Instead, he pressed a data slate into her hand, its screen glowing with the Council's seal. "Command has called an emergency session. They want us to prepare a full briefing on the Vexor threat." Alana accepted it mechanically, but her gaze remained on the burning planet below. Somewhere deep within her, beneath years of conditioning, something shifted. Humanity had always been the silent watchers. But as the fires of Thula 7 flared brighter, the silence no longer felt like strength. It felt like cowardice. She closed her eyes against the light of the dying world, And in the darkness behind her lids, she saw the shadow of a choice, approaching one. That would end 3 centuries of silence forever. The High Council, Chamber of Olympus Station, was a place few ever saw with their own eyes. Buried deep within the asteroid belt, hidden beneath mountains of rock, and cloaked in the most sophisticated stealth humanity had ever devised. It was the beating heart of the Shadow Fleet, the secret government of a civilization that officially did not exist. The chamber was circular, with tiers of seats rising like a coliseum around a central platform. Above, a domed ceiling shimmered with projections of the stars. Though no starlight reached this place naturally, Commander Elena Rice stood on the platform, her boots echoing faintly against the polished floor as she faced the most powerful people in human space. Holographic markers hovered in the air before her, each representing a Vixar conquest over the last 50 years. Red flares of light spread outward in tangled webs, each flare a civilization absorbed, each line another path of expansion. Thule 7 had already been marked with a final, pulsing scarlet ring. The Vexer have conquered 12 civilizations in the past 20 years, she reported, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Their pattern is clear assimilation, integration, and technological acceleration. Every conquest makes them stronger. Every delay makes us weaker. Admiral Zhong stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back, his presence a silent anchor. He let her carry the briefing. She had earned this. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the projection shifted. The red markers pushed steadily outward, until they touched the luminous blue sphere representing the Lumina system. The room seemed to tighten with unease. The Lumina were artists, philosophers, fragile in the ways of war but rich in culture. Their radiant cities and art pieces often praised even among rival neighbors. A civilization like that would be devoured in days. Director Isabel Chun, head of the Earth Unification Government, leaned forward in her seat. She was not a woman accustomed to hesitation. At current rates, she asked, her tone sharp, when will they reach our monitored periphery? Within 5 years, Elena answered. The Lumina system will fall first. Silence settled. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity's shadow games had always worked because no one looked too closely. But the Vexer were relentless, stripping worlds bare, dissecting every technology they encountered. Eventually, they would stumble across something that revealed humanity's hidden hand. The question was not if, but when General Santos, his uniform immaculate, broke the silence. We swore to remain in the shadows. To act now is to abandon centuries of safety. We can never return once the veil is lifted. Do we even understand the consequences? Elena met his gaze. For the first time, she did not shrink behind protocol. With respect, General, the consequence of doing nothing is genocide. The Lumina will not withstand the Vexer, and when the Vexer finish with them, they will move on, assimilating every scrap of knowledge and power they claim. What will we say, then, that we were too afraid to act while the galaxy burned around us? Santos bristled, but Chun silenced him with a gesture. The director rose slowly, her figure cutting a commanding silhouette against the starfield dome. She walked to the projection, her hand passing through the image of the Lumina homeworld. 3 centuries ago, our ancestors chose silence because they feared what was out there. They hid us away to survive, but that is not who we are anymore. Her voice grew hard, final. Prepare first contact protocols, quietly, and give me options for both diplomatic and military responses. If we step onto the galactic stage, we will do it right. A low murmur spread through the chamber, shock and apprehension woven with a thread of excitement. After centuries of shadows, humanity would at last reveal itself. Admiral Zhong's expression was grim, but his eyes flicked to Elena with the faintest glimmer of approval. She had planted the seed, and Chun had let it grow. Humanity's silence was ending. As the council adjourned, Elena lingered by the star map, watching the red tide of Vexor expansion creep outward. She could almost see it, reaching across the void, swallowing world after world. For the first time in her career, the weight pressing on her chest was not just the burden of secrecy, but the certainty of change. Zhong joined her quietly, his voice low. "You understand what this means, don't you?" Elena nodded, eyes still fixed on the map. "It means the galaxy is about to find out we've been watching all along." Elysium hung at the center of the holotank like a living opal, its oceans reflecting twin suns, its cloud bands breaking light into prismatic veils that swirled over continents etched with luminous cities. On the bridge of the cloaked human vessel Prometheus, Captain Maya Ortiz watched the Vexor scouts enter the system in slashes of emerald drive light, their formation neat, predatory, and unhurried. The Predators had learned across a dozen campaigns that terror did the work of plasma and steel. Arrive, loom, and let the target understand what was coming. The Lumina, artisans and philosophers whose cities pulsed with bioluminescent grace, would read that intent all too well. "Scout screen fanning to high orbit," reported Jackson, her executive officer, his voice clipped but even. "2 light cruisers, 6 cutters, and a command sloop at the rear. No sign they've detected us." Maya kept her hands folded on the armrests of her chair, shoulders relaxed in a way that steadied her crew. The bridge lighting was low. Consoles breathed cool blues and greens. The scent of ozone and polymer was faint as a heartbeat. For 3 centuries, officers like her had been trained to be ghosts, to enter systems unseen, to record and withdraw. It was an art and a habit so deeply carved into human reflex that breaking it felt like stepping from a shadow into a spotlight. Her mother had served in the early years of the doctrine, when even the idea of transmitting a message to an alien world had been heresy. Maya had promised herself she would obey that caution until the galaxy made disobedience a better form of loyalty. "Local traffic?" she asked. "Civilian only," said Combs. "Luminous ships in low orbit and station keeping near the moon. Nothing with teeth. I'm picking up an all-frequency broadcast nonviolent appeal for mediation." The officer hesitated. "The Vexor are already jamming. The message isn't escaping the system. Recorded," Maya said. Everything they were brave enough to say. The bridge fell quiet as the melodic multi-tone flowed for a few seconds before dissolving in static. Even distorted, it felt like a plea spoken into a cathedral. A tactical overlay bloomed above the holotank, Vexor trajectories arcing toward geostationary platforms. "They're moving to intimidation range," Jackson said. "Weapons are cold, but hot cycling. 30 minutes to full charge." "Prometheus to Shadow Net," Maya said, voice level. "Confirm first contact authority." There was a heartbeat of encrypted silence, then Director Chun's outline resolved in a tiny and set her presence, like gravity, calm and implacable. "Authority confirmed. Lead with diplomacy. If they fire on civilian assets, you are authorized to intervene. Do not escalate beyond demonstration parameters." Chun's gaze pinned her. "Show them what we are, Captain, and what we won't become." "Understood." Maya rose. The deck hummed beneath her boots as she stepped closer to the holotank. Elysium's beauty wavered within its shell of void, fragile and brazen all at once. She thought of the reports from Thula 7 scrolling past, like eulogies, of Commander Elena Rice standing in a chamber under a false starfield and risking her career to say silence had a cost. It was time to pay a different price. Bring us between the Lumina Capital Arc and the Vexor Command Sloop, she said. Zero flare translation. The cloak on my mark. Open hailing channels, Vexor Standard, Lumina Lingua, and Trade Band. Jackson's eyebrow twitched, the only sign of surprise. "Aye, Captain, All stations prepare to step into history. The Prometheus shifted, a whisper of inertia redistribution rippling through the hull. Outside, they were a hole in starlight. Inside, they were a promise about to become a sentence. The Vexor formation expanded like a net. The cutter pickets flared sensor pings across the empty space where a human ship waited to become visible. Mark. The stars shivered as the cloak fell away. A silhouette of angled obsidian slid into existence. No visible weapon ports, no heat plumes, no wasteful lines. Just presence, dark and irrefutable, precisely where no ship had been a breath ago. The Vexor formation hesitated. It was a fractional stutter in velocity and bearing, so small it would have been lost in the noise if the Prometheus hadn't been designed to read hesitation as well as heat. "Hail the command sloop," Maya said. The forward view screen blossomed with a Vexor bridge-ribbed metal. Cold light, scaled officers bristling with ceremonial spikes along their jawlines. The four-eyed commander leaning toward the pickup radiated practiced disdain. "Unidentified vessel," he hissed, syllables clipped by a translator that had learned from hundreds of hidden hours. "You intrude upon an Imperial action. Identify your species and vacate your position or be fired upon." "This is Captain Maya Ortiz of the Earth Alliance vessel Prometheus," Maya said. Her voice was steady, conversational, free of threat. "You have entered the sovereign system of Elysium with hostile intent. We request that you stand down your weapons and withdraw." The Vexor bristled, their crest lights flickering in subtle shades of contempt and curiosity. "Earth Alliance," the commander repeated, tasting the words as if they might cut him. "We have no record of your kind. Your vessel's configuration is unknown. Your presence is irrelevant. Withdraw." "Your records will change," Maya said softly. "So will your expectations." She cut the channel before the Vexor could spit another practiced warning. "Comes patch me to the Lumina High Council." A new image appeared, suffused with warm bioluminescent glow. The Lumina Counselor's skin swam with shifting patterns that the Prometheus's systems annotated in the periphery. Astonishment, hope, fear carefully braided. Their language was chimes and breath and tone, translated into clear, bell-like speech. "Unknown protectors," said the First Minister. "We did not expect an answer." "You asked," Maya said. "We heard." She allowed herself the hint of a smile. "Humanity has observed your people for a long time. We have remained silent because silence kept us and others safe. That has changed. If you wish it, we declare Elysium under our protection." The council chamber brightened with a cascade of color gratitude, relief, a sharp quiver of disbelief. "We accept," the First Minister said. "We accept. We accept." "Then hear it spoken," Maya said, turning to her crew. "Transmit declaration across every channel in system. Encrypt a copy for the shadow net." The words went out, like a bell note struck in the heart of a storm. The bridge screens painted new arcs across the holotank as Vexor cutters shifted toward weapons positions, their hesitation dissolving back into doctrine. Elysium's orbital platforms powered shields. On the prompt of a human carrier that hadn't existed 10 seconds before, the Prometheus stood between a civilization that made beauty and one that made war. And for the first time in 3 centuries, a human ship did not back away from that line. "Captain," Jackson said quietly, "you know what comes next." "Course." Maya watched the Vexor harden into their inevitable shape. They call in wolves when the first doesn't bite deep enough. The forward display pinged as the Vexor commander's face returned, crest lights now bright with anger. "You presume much, unknown," he said. 8 cutters can erase your error before our fleet arrives." "Perhaps," Maya said. "But you'd be breaking the easiest treaty you could ever sign." "What treaty?" "The one you draft. When you choose not to fire today." It landed with the force of a parry rather than a strike, But the Vexor felt the shift. Power did not always arrive as heat. Sometimes it arrived as grammar. We declare, we protect, we invite. Elysium's twin suns threw a ribbon of light across the Prometheus's hull, catching no edge because the hull yielded the light and gave it back only as a suggestion. Hold us here, Maya said to the helm. Minimal posture. Sensors wide. If they light a single civilian grid, we demonstrate, Jackson finished. His mouth didn't smile, but his eyes did. The bridge fell into a poised quiet. The crew had practiced 1,000 times for a moment they weren't sure would ever come. Beyond the hull, an empire measured this new presence and found its scales. Imperfect. On the planet below, in galleries and gardens and open-air amphitheaters, the Lumina looked up and saw a shape cut from darkness hold the line where songs might have ended. Maya stayed very still, listening to the ship breathe and the stars wait, and in the hush before the next move, she felt the doctrine loosen its last hold on her bones. The void above Elysium was suddenly crowded. Vexor warships slipped into orbit. Like knives gleaming in cold light, cutters and destroyers, forming the serrated edge of a blade aimed at the planet's throat. Their command sloop pulsed with energy, its weapon capacitors cycling from green to amber as it prepared a display of firepower that would erase the fragile orbital platforms guarding the Lumina capital. From the Prometheus's bridge, Captain Maya Ortiz watched the formation unfold. Every instinct told her the predators were moving into the kill, but she also knew something else. The moment was balanced on the knife edge between spectacle and history. Cutter Group 1 shifting. Into high orbit, Jackson reported, his voice as sharp as the lines of the tactical display. They're establishing an intimidation net. Commander Dravik's flagship just ordered them to light targeting solutions on Lumina defense platforms. The holoscreen bloomed with red arcs converging on the planet. Maya stood, her dark uniform immaculate, her expression unreadable. Signal. All ships in the net. Time to reveal the hand. The order went out, carried by encrypted laser bursts across the system. A heartbeat later, space rippled like a curtain being drawn back. 7 more human vessels slid from invisibility, decloaking in precise formation around the Prometheus. Each ship was larger than the Vexor cutters, their hulls gleaming with angular armor that seemed to drink starlight. The Athena and Ares, 2 massive battle carriers, dropped into real space at the system's edge, their drives flashing brilliant white before falling dark. Thousands of strike craft spilled from their bays, arranging themselves into disciplined patterns like constellations. Come to life. A hush fell across the Prometheus's bridge. For centuries, no one but humanity had seen ships like these. The Lumina, watching from their cities and orbital spires, froze as the black silhouettes shimmered into being above their skies, rippled through their council chambers, bioluminescent skin patterns flashing cascades of astonishment and hope. On the Vexor command sloop, Fleet Commander Dravik's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in stunned disbelief. For a long moment he said nothing, merely stared at the impossible fleet that had materialized inside his perimeter. At last, his voice came low and sharp. What sorcery is this? The comms crackled to life, Maya's voice calm and measured, filling the Vexor bridge. This is Captain Maya Ortiz of the Earth Alliance vessel Prometheus. We repeat our demand. Disengage your weapons and withdraw. Elysium is under our protection. Dravik's crest lights flared crimson with rage. He leaned toward the cum pickup, his voice a hiss of scorn. You dare to oppose the Empire with a handful of vessels? 30 warships stand against you, human. And when our main fleet arrives, you'll be swept from this system like dust before the storm. Maya folded her, hands behind her back. Her eyes never left the forward display, where the Vexor fleet loomed with predatory patience. Perhaps. But numbers are not everything, Commander. You will discover that soon enough. On the planet below, the Lumina gathered in their open amphitheaters, staring upward as the strangers who had answered their plea now stood between them and annihilation. The First Minister's bioluminescent skin rippled with a pattern that every Lumina child knew, reverence mixed with disbelief. Against all reason, they were no longer alone. The standoff stretched, weapons primed, sensors scanned. The void itself seemed to wait. For the first time in generations, the Vexor advance had faltered, not from battle, not from surrender, but from uncertainty. The predators had found something they had never faced before, prey that stared back without fear. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Maya allowed herself the faintest smile. "Hold position," she ordered. "Let them decide if they want to discover what happens when we stop being silent." Dravik's crest dimmed. His claws tapped the command console, hesitation written in the rhythm of metal against metal. He had faced fleets, raised worlds, watched civilizations crumble. Never once had he been forced to consider whether the cost of conquest was too high. And yet now, surrounded by ships that had appeared from nothing, commanded by a species no record mentioned, he hesitated. At last, with a snarl, he cut the channel. The Vexor ships did not fire. They held their formation, circling, snarling, but leashed. For the first time in the Empire's expansion, they had been denied not by force of arms, but by the promise of it. Maya returned to her chair, her face composed though her pulse hammered in her ears. The silence doctrine was broken. The galaxy would never again believe Earth was absent. "Send word to Olympus Station," she said. "First contact achieved. Vexor forces contained for now." Around her, the bridge crew exhaled in unison, the sound like a tide rushing out. Outside the viewport, Elysium glimmered in twin sunlight, a jewel still unbroken, shielded at last. Humanity had stepped from the shadows. The question was not whether the Vexor would return, but how ready Earth would be when they did. The Eternal Dominion drifted at the heart of a vast assembly of steel and fire. 3 grand fleets had gathered in the void beyond Vexor Prime, a constellation of warships so immense they blotted entire starfields from view. Carriers stretched like cities, their hulls bristling with launch bays. Cruisers and destroyers moved in disciplined shoals, engines glowing emerald against the black. 200 capital ships, each flanked by escorts, waited in formation for the order to march. Within the command throne of the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Imperator Zex Kor stood like a figure carved from obsidian, 6 eyes scanning the tactical holosphere. Beside him, High General Zoric's scales gleamed under the cold light, his voice low and certain. 3 fleets, over 200 ships. Enough to scour an empire from existence. The humans will not withstand such force. Zex Kor did not answer immediately. His crest lights dimmed as he replayed the recording of their last encounter. The human captain, calm, unflinching, standing in defiance of imperial decree. Ships that had appeared from nothing, with cloaks that should not exist. His claws flexed against the arm of his throne. "They humiliated us, General. Not with fire, but with shadow. That cannot stand." Dravik, the fleet commander who had faced the humans at Elysium, bowed low. "Their ships are advanced, Imperator, but limited." They revealed no more than 8 vessels, with 2 carriers at system's edge. It was display, not substance. "They cannot have fleets to match ours." Zex Kor's gaze shifted to him, sharp as a blade. "And if you are wrong?" The question hung heavy in the chamber. Even here, even among the greatest of the Empire's warlords, none could ignore the sting of uncertainty. While the Vexor prepared their armada, across the void humanity prepared in silence of a different kind. Olympus Station hummed with activity, its hidden chambers alive with the rhythm of war. Where once its halls had carried only the quiet shuffle of intelligence officers, Now they rang with the stride of fleet captains and the clipped voices of strategists. The star map in the council chamber glowed with shifting icons' red markers. For the Vexor fleets, blue for humanity's hidden assets. Fleet Commander Alena Rice stood before it, posture taut, the weight of responsibility coiled in her shoulders. Weeks ago she had been an observer, a keeper of silence. Now she bore command of 32 vessels hidden at the edge of the Lumina system. The Vexor are mobilizing everything, she said, voice steady but edged with steel. 3 grand fleets, converging on Elysium within 20 cycles. They mean to make an example of us. General Santos scowled, his arms folded across his chest. 200 ships, Commander. Even with our technology, that ratio is unsustainable. Do we have the strength to meet them head-on? Director Isabel Chun's expression did not waver. Not strength in their terms. We will not match numbers with numbers. We will demonstrate. The room quieted. Every officer knew what she meant. The demonstration protocol, a weaponized application of technologies tested only in secret, never revealed to the galaxy. A field that could silence fleets without destroying them. Power without annihilation. It was the ultimate expression of humanity's philosophy. Overwhelming strength, tempered with restraint. Helena's jaw tightened. If we deploy the suppression field, the Vexor will know we are not newcomers. They will realize we have prepared. For centuries. Good, Chun replied. It is time the galaxy understood who we are. Around the table, doubts whispered unspoken. What if the field failed? What if it worked too well, and humanity was feared as much as the empire they sought to check? But the decision had already been made. History had tilted, and silence was no longer a shield, but a shroud dot in the tactical hangars of the Prometheus. Captain Maya Ortiz walked among her crew as they prepared for the coming storm. Engineers checked containment relays. Pilots calibrated fighter craft. Officers murmured into secure comms. Maya paused at the viewport where the stars stretched indifferent and infinite. Elysium glowed faintly in the distance, its twin suns. Washing the world in soft light, Jackson joined her, hands behind his back. We've stood between predators and prey before, Captain. But never like this. Maya's reflection met his in the glass. That's because this time, the predators are coming for us too. She let the silence stretch before she spoke again. Softer, more certain. The Vexor think we're a voice that appeared out of nowhere. They don't know we've been watching, cataloging, building. They don't know what patience can become when it's armed. Jackson gave a tight nod. When the fleets arrive, they'll learn. The countdown had already begun. Across light years, 2 civilizations prepared to test each other, one with overwhelming numbers, the other with a weapon no one else could even imagine. In the shadows of Olympus Station, Director Chun studied the projections, her expression. Carved from iron, the Vexor will come believing they face prey, she said. We will show them prey. It became the hunter. And in that declaration, whispered beneath layers of secrecy, humanity's long silence sharpened into something new, not just survival, but inevitability. The Vexor Armada arrived like an eclipse. Hundreds of warships tore through the veil of faster-than-light travel, their emerald drive flares igniting the void at the edge of the Lumina system. Carriers loomed like moving fortresses. Destroyers and cruisers swarmed in precision ranks, and at the center of it all glided the Eternal Dominion, the Imperator's personal flagship, a mountain of armor and guns that seemed to blot out half. The stars. On the Prometheus, Captain Maya Ortiz rose from her command chair as the tactical holotank filled with crimson icons. The scale of it was overwhelming. 200 capital ships, thousands of escorts, a storm built to crush empires. Even her seasoned crew felt the tremor of awe and fear ripple through the air. Status of our formation? she asked. Commander. Jackson's voice was calm, though his jaw was tight. 32 vessels holding in defensive net. Athena and Ares, battle carriers in position. Suppression field arrays synchronized across the fleet. Everything is primed. Maya nodded, eyes fixed on the swelling tide of red. Then we hold until they make their intent clear. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Imperator Zexcor stood tall. His 6 eyes narrowed as he gazed at the distant cluster of human vessels. 8 ships again, he said with a sneer. A handful more around them. They believe they can meet the Empire with scraps. End this farce. Fleet Commander Dravik bowed, crest lights flashing crimson. Yes, Imperator, their defiance will be erased. He turned to his officers. Prepare all weapons. Target the human flagship first. When it burns, the rest will follow. The Vexor fleet shifted, weapons charging, arcs of energy building. Like thunderheads before a storm. Alarms whispered across the Prometheus as the targeting lock settled. Captain, Jackson said softly, they mean to erase us. Then it's time, Maya replied. She opened a secure channel to Olympus. Station. Director Chun, Vexor forces are powering weapons. Requesting authorization to initiate demonstration protocol. Chun's voice came back, crisp and steady, without hesitation. Authorization granted. Show them. Maya turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Rares, initiate suppression. Sequence, full synchronization. On my mark. The bridge grew quiet, breathless. Every console glowed with containment field calculations, energy flux surging through conduits that had never been pushed this far outside of hidden test ranges. The Prometheus trembled faintly, not with fear, but with power waiting to be unleashed. Mark. Light. Blossomed around the human fleet, invisible to the eye, yet overwhelming to every instrument. A sphere of zero-point energy radiated outward, expanding like a tide across the void. It touched the first rank of Vexor destroyers, then silence. Engines died, weapons dimmed, hull lights winked out. One by one, the mighty warships froze in space, drifting like toys abandoned by a careless child. Status? Maya demanded. All Vexor vessels within 1,000 kilometers are dead in the water, Rare said in astonishment. No damage, just shut down. The field kept expanding, unstoppable. Cruisers fell dark. Carriers went cold, their fighter bays sealed, and powerless. The Eternal Dominion itself shuddered as every weapon port flickered and died, its titanic drives collapsing into silence. Across the fleet, panic erupted as systems failed with no cause, no countermeasure. On the Dominion's bridge, Zexcor roared, claws tearing into the railing. Report! What have they done? His science officer's voice cracked with fear. Not destruction, Imperator containment. Our energy generation has been suppressed. We cannot fight. The Imperator's crest lights dimmed to a shade no one on his bridge had ever seen before. Fear. On the Prometheus, Maya opened the channel, her voice measured, calm, merciless in its certainty. Vexor fleet, this is not an attack. This is a demonstration. Your ships are intact, your crews unharmed. But for the next 6 hours, you will remain powerless. Consider what it means that we chose not to destroy you. The communication cut. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of human systems untouched by the field. 200 warships and Empire's pride hung in the void like ornaments, stripped of their fury. On Elysium below, the lumina filled their plazas with bioluminescent cascades of hope and awe. Their children pointed at the sky where predators had been turned into shadows, and their councils whispered a single truth. A new power had stepped into the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as arbiters. Maya sat back in her chair, her voice low. carrying to every ear on her bridge. For 3 centuries, we were silent. Tonight, the galaxy has heard us. And in the stillness between stars, the Vexor Empire realized the balance of power had shifted forever. 6 months later, the Nexus system shone with lights it had never known before. Where once the void had been empty, a vast station now drifted ajar. Marvel built in record time by human engineers, Lumina artisans, and 6 other civilizations, newly drawn together by fear, awe, and hope. Its halls curved in luminous arcs, walls of transparent alloy opening to a panorama of stars. The conclave chamber at its heart was circular, vast, and deliberate in its design. No throne, no hierarchy, every delegation seated in equal measure around the central platform. For the first time in galactic history, the Vexor Empire had sent diplomats rather than generals. Their scales gleamed under the chamber lights, their posture less predatory than cautious. Even humbled, they radiated pride, but their eyes darted to the human delegation with unease, as though uncertain whether to treat them as enemies, rivals, or something entirely new. At the central dais stood Director Isabel Chun, her voice carrying with the calm gravity of someone who had already changed the course of history. For 3 centuries, she began, humanity chose silence. We observed the rise and fall of empires. We saw brilliance, we saw cruelty, and we saw the galaxy fracture again and again under conquest. That silence is over. Today we stand, together, not as hidden watchers, but as neighbors. We propose to concord out a foundation for peace built on respect, sovereignty, and the right of all peoples to endure. Murmurs spread through the chamber as translation systems turned her words into 100 tongues. Some species nodded, their forms flickering with relief. Others whispered with suspicion. First Minister Ilara of the Lumina rose next, her skin rippling with cascades of bioluminescent blue, their ceremonial color for sincerity. When the Vexor came for us, we had no defenses. It was humanity who stood in our skies, who stayed the hand of annihilation. For that, we live. But this summit is not about gratitude. It is about what comes next, an era where power serves not to destroy, but to protect. Her words drew soft tones of agreement from many, though others, those who had known only war, shifted restlessly. At last, the chamber's attention turned to the Vexor delegation. Lead emissary Travok rose, his crest lowered in a gesture of uneasy respect. The Empire acknowledges the reality of change, he said, his voice clipped, every syllable reluctant. The demonstration at Elysium proved the humans are not prey, nor rivals to be consumed. We retain sovereignty over our current domains, but we are prepared to discuss frameworks of cooperation, of non-aggression. A ripple of tension coursed through the chamber. For the Vexor to concede, even that much was unprecedented. Everyone present knew what it meant. The predators had been checked, not by force of arms, but by something greater. Behind the public debates, in a private chamber adjoining the hall, Chun faced Supreme Imperator Zexkor himself, his first personal appearance since the humiliation at Elysium. He was not cloaked in arrogance now, though pride still burned in his gaze. His voice was low, measured. You could have destroyed us. You could have taken our fleets, our worlds, our empire itself. Instead, you froze us, shamed us, and then let us go. Why? Chun met his gaze evenly. Because humanity did not emerge to become another empire. We came because we could. No longer allow slaughter to go unanswered. Conquest only leads to ashes, Imperator. Even for the conqueror. Zexkor's crest lights flickered uncertainly. Then what do you seek? Power cloaked in restraint confuses me more than domination. Chun allowed herself the faintest smile. We seek a galaxy where no child looks to the sky in fear of bombardment. where strength exists but does not consume. That is our purpose. She rose, gathering her datapad. But do not mistake restraint for weakness. We acted with mercy at Elysium because the galaxy needed a demonstration, not a massacre. Zex. Core 6 eyes narrowed. And if we test you again? Chun paused at the door, turning just enough for her voice to carry like steel wrapped in silk. Then you will learn the demonstration was not our limit. It was our warning. When she returned to the conclave chamber, the Concordat charter shimmered in the holotank. Signatures and glyphs from dozens of civilizations beginning to spiral into place. Humanity had stepped into the light, not as conquerors, but as arbiters too. Powerful to ignore, too deliberate to dismiss. As the Assembly ratified the first articles of the new order, Fleet Commander Elena Rice stood near the viewport, watching the Nexus station drift against the stars. For centuries, she had been trained to keep her silence, to accept inaction as safety. Now she gazed out at a galaxy where humanity's voice rang clear. She no longer wondered if they had done the right thing. The luminous laughter, echoing through the halls, was answer enough. In orbit, the Prometheus and her sister ships held silent vigil, black silhouettes against the starfield. They were no longer shadows hidden from history. They were history's next chapter. And as the stars burned on in their endless silence, the galaxy itself seemed to pause as though waiting for the story that humanity had just begun to tell.